Hey everyone, welcome to a Week 6 recap edition of the West Coast Best Coast Football Show here on the Off the Mic Sports Network. You're taking side the former and new Pac-12 teams and how the West Coast teams did in college football. A wild Week 6. Taping this kind of late. This will come out on Sunday morning. A lot of late games that happened. A lot of crazy shit went down this weekend. Alabama goes down. Kalen DeBoer, I'm singing his praises as this great head coach. He goes to Vanderbilt and loses a game. Like that I didn't see that happening. We'll talk about Miami's insane comeback from 25 down in the third quarter, coming back from 25 down in like a span of 25 minutes. Like that was insane against Cal. But we'll go from Friday to Saturday and kind of give you like the lens of my thoughts on the weekend for the West Coast teams in Week 6. UNLV loses their first game of the season to Syracuse in overtime, 44-41 at home. A controversial roughing the passer penalty on a 3rd and 20 kind of spearheaded Syracuse to come back. It wasn't because of a Haj Malik Williams, the guy who replaced Matthew Sluka. 21-25, he had 3 touchdowns, another touchdown rushing. He was great. Ricky White had a great game, 10 for 135 and a touchdown. Kyle McCord getting the week off, 355, 3 touchdowns. He threw 63 passes in the game. Rondé Gadsden had 142 yards receiving, and then it's LaQuint Allen scoring the game-winning touchdown after UNLV had kicked a field goal in overtime. And Syracuse wins 44-41. UNLV gets their first loss of the season. This is significant for Boise State because UNLV was kind of early kind of driver's seat for that, group of 5 bid. But yeah, so this wasn't surprising because Syracuse, this was honestly the best team that UNLV had really played this season so far. They had played some other Power 4 opponents. I think they played Kansas earlier this season. I think they might have played Houston too. But this was a tough one. Syracuse had been a pretty decent team. They did suffer a loss to Stanford a while back. But yeah, I mean, unfortunate UNLV didn't get a call to go their way that would have helped them seal the win, and Syracuse ends up winning this thing in overtime. So UNLV falls from the ranks of the undefeated. Even though they're not a new Pac-12 team, I felt like since it's a West Coast-based football show, and also they've been one of the big stories in college football with the Matthew Sluka situation, I figured I'd monitor that. We'll see what goes on with UNLV moving forward, considering that they're going to be a Mountain West team. And obviously that'll play directly in a role with Boise State moving forward, and Boise State's obviously going to the Pac-12. So that was a bit of a semi-shocking result on Friday night. One that wasn't very shocking is Oregon clobbers Michigan State 31-10 on Friday night. Dylan Gabriel threw some bad passes in this game. He had 2 interceptions, but he did have 257 yards and 2 touchdowns. Jordan James, 166 on the ground with 1 touchdown. Oregon ran for 213 as a team. This game wasn't competitive. It might have looked competitive early on. I think Oregon scored a touchdown and it was competitive early on, but Oregon wins 31-10 over Michigan State. Tez Johnson, 10 catches, 84 yards, TD receiving. And Oregon holds Michigan State to 250 yards of total offense and 59 yards rushing. Like, Michigan State was a nice story, the Big Ten early on, but they've now fallen apart, really. Like, this is what you kind of expected. Jonathan Smith in his first year at Michigan State. But Oregon wins. They're undefeated. They host Ohio State next week in one of the games of the year. And I couldn't be more excited for that game. But yeah, this was not a surprise. It was more a story of would Oregon get caught looking ahead. And yeah, Dylan Gabriel had a kind of a mixed bag. He had 2 interceptions in this game, but Oregon ultimately wins. UCLA, I've said it before and I'll say it again. UCLA is probably as bad as you're going to get of the former Pac-12 teams. It's sad because these circumstances, like it shows you that Deshaun Foster is just not really cut out to be a head coach. They got put in a tough spot when Chip Kelly left late in the process. Like they left in like February, and they had to keep the recruiting class together. People love Deshaun Foster, but he had never been a coordinator. He had never really at any level been a head coach, and you're seeing that this is just not working. They score 11 points against Penn State. I mean, Penn State didn't really, particularly play that amazing, and they were in kind of a look-ahead spot in this big noon window with going to USC next week. But yeah, UCLA starts Justin Martin. He throws for 167 yards and a touchdown. But UCLA only gets 260 yards of offense. Drew Aller was solid in this game, 237 passing and a touchdown for Penn State. Penn State faces USC next week. They're undefeated. They're really good. And UCLA's really bad. I mean, there's not really much else for me to say about this game. It really sucks because UCLA is a very proud program, and it's just like it sucks that one of your own is just not going to cut it. But at what point do they pull the plug on this whole thing with Deshaun Foster? Because I just get the feeling that this is a one and done season, and I would hate to see them do that to one of their own. But it is clear as day that they cannot compete with even marginally talented teams in this Big Ten. And we'll see how they do with like the lower level. Like obviously Indiana's a lot better, and Indiana destroyed them. Penn State, that was going to be a tough ask for them. They competed with LSU for a little bit, an SEC team. I just don't see a lot of optimism with this UCLA team. Virginia Tech clobbers Stanford. Stanford's not very good. I expected Virginia Tech to rebound off that heartbreaker against Miami. They went 31-7. Kyron Jones has 201 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. Daquan Felton, who had the touchdown taken away in that Miami game, has a touchdown in this game, 84 yards receiving. Stanford only gains 258 yards of total offense. Like, listen, I like Troy Taylor. This is going to be really hard for them. Again, competing in a big ACC. Like, they did get the nice win on the road against Syracuse. But I don't anticipate Stanford winning a whole lot of games this year. So that's unfortunate. Virginia Tech's, I mean, even though they've lost a couple of games, they're a solid team. Kyron Jones is a really good quarterback. So not surprising there to see Virginia Tech go to the Farm and just clobber Stanford. One of the better games of the day that probably not a lot of people watched was Oregon State and Colorado State. This went to double overtime, and the Beavs win 39-31 over Colorado State. Oregon State, don't look now, they're 4-1. Their only loss is to Oregon that they got clobbered by. Don't look now. Oregon State, man, like, they run the ball really well. Anthony Hankerson had 113 yards rushing. I mean, Giovanni McCoy had 91 yards rushing at the quarterback. He had 3 touchdowns. I mean, Anthony Hankerson gets the game-winning 25-yard run in double overtime. And, Oregon State, man, they're 4-1, man. Like, I'm not gonna go as far as to say, like, because that loss to Oregon was kind of eye-opening. But hey, to be 4-1, given all of the change with that program, is pretty damn impressive for Trent Bray. So shout out to them. That's pretty damn cool. I mean, Colorado State's not a great team. And Oregon State is going to benefit from playing a lot of Mountain West teams, but they're still winning games. That means something. So, very fun game. Oregon State wins in double overtime. My guy Ryan Leaf and my guy Ted Robinson got to call that on the CW, so that was very cool. They get treated to some really good games that I wish a lot more people would watch because these are a lot of fun. Speaking of a lot of fun, let's talk about Boise State. More specifically, let's talk about Ashton Jeanty. Because Boise State wins 62-30 over Utah State. That's not the story. Ashton Jeanty. We are now 5 games into this season. And Ashton Jeanty in this game only had 13 carries, but he had 186 yards and 3 touchdowns. He had a 63-yard run and a 75-yard run, among many things. And I want you guys to understand this, and we've talked about this on the Mad Sports Show. I talked about this with Danny Udoff, and we'll probably, hammer this home again this week. Ashton Jeanty, through 5 games this season, has 1,031 yards rushing and 16 touchdowns in 5 games. I mean, listen, Cam Ward is obviously going to get more attention for what he accomplished in bringing Miami back on the road against Cal Travis Hunter was off this week. He's obviously got a lot of attention being at Colorado and Coach Brian being his coach. We need to start really giving Ashton Jeanty the attention that he deserves. Because this is not, hey, we're facing a bunch of bum opponents in the Mountain West. This guy is taking contact, is causing missed tackles, and is still running at well over 10 yards a carry. And 5 games into the season, he already has 1,000 yards rushing and 16 touchdowns. If he keeps going on this pace, this guy is going to have a downright historic season, and we are going to have to start talking about Barry Sanders, who ran for 2,600 yards several years ago. And at what point do we have to stop the whole, it's Boise State? I don't care. These numbers are absurd. And yes, Utah State is not good, but if Boise State continues to win and he keeps putting up numbers and they're firmly in this college football playoff mix, I do not understand how you do not give this guy the award, because this is not cheap yardage. This is not bullshit competition. This guy is one of the best players in college football. And frankly, not a lot of people get a chance to watch him because he's at Boise State. So recognize that this kid is unbelievable. And again, 1,031 yards and 16 touchdowns. I don't have the average for 5 games, but he also didn't play a half. So he's basically played 4.5 games. So take that with what you will. This wasn't competitive. I needed to get on my soapbox for Ashton Jeanty, and I'm probably going to be doing it a lot here on this show moving forward, because as far as I'm concerned, the Heisman should be his. And I really hope that politics and regional stuff doesn't screw him out of it, because we've seen it happen before. But this is some unbelievable shit that is going on in Boise, Idaho. Another game that I did not have happening the way that it did, Minnesota beats USC. It felt like a trap game. USC going to the Midwest, not a place they're accustomed to going to. They had that come from behind win. They got kind of smacked in the mouth by Wisconsin. And Minnesota wins 24-17. Max Brosmer has 3 rushing touchdowns. He throws for under 200 yards, but he has 3 rushing touchdowns. Darius Taylor, the star running back for Minnesota, 30 touches total for 200 yards. Miller Moss didn't have his best game. 2 interceptions, 200 yards passing, and a touchdown. Woody Marks was really good in this game with in the running game, 134 yards and a touchdown. But Max Brosmer, in the final minutes, gets another rushing touchdown, and Minnesota steals this game. You had a feeling that Minnesota might screw somebody up here, and they should have at least had an opportunity to beat Michigan. There was an onside kick, offside controversy last week. This was a tricky game for USC, and obviously with them hosting Penn State next week, USC's dropped 2 games, man. And Lincoln Riley can say, hey, we could be 5-0. We're 2 plays away from being 5-0. Well, you know what? You couldn't tackle, and you made some horrible play calls in the Michigan game, and then you only get 17 points on the road at Minnesota. You're a better team than them. I don't care if you're traveling to the Midwest and you're a West Coast team. You've got to go win that game if you want to be serious about being a college football playoff contender. And now they've got 2 losses, and now you got Penn State coming in your building next week. And whether they win it or not, it's really irrelevant because, I mean, Indiana is firmly in the driver's seat in the Big Ten. Like, I'm not ready to say that USC's, conference hopes are done and getting to the playoff are done, but they're pretty damn close, because you cannot lose a game on the road at Minnesota after the way you should have won that game against Michigan a couple weeks ago. So it's a bad loss for USC, and it feels like there's always 1 or 2 of these head scratches with Lincoln Riley in the last couple of seasons with him as the head coach at USC. Rematch of the national championship game. Washington beats Michigan 27-17. Will Rogers has a great game with 271 yards passing and 2 touchdowns. Jonah Coleman gets the game-winning touchdown on 18 carries for 80 yards and a touchdown. Denzel Boston and Giles Jackson both had TD catches. Really cool for Giles Jackson, the Michigan transfer, to score against his former team. Good for Washington. They hold Michigan to 113 yards passing. Michigan might have actually found somebody who could throw a forward pass, but they still aren't very good at it. good for Washington. They've had a couple of close losses, and Jed Fish is doing the best he can with kind of a shuffled deck. But yeah, Michigan's not that great, and good for Washington to get this one at home, a high-profile game on NBC. They get the win, and Washington, hey, they could be interesting for one of these top tier Big Ten teams that face them. They're going to only keep getting better and better because I like Will Rogers as a quarterback. Jonah Coleman's a good running back, and Jed Fish is a really good head coach. They're going to figure it out at some point. They've just shot themselves in the foot a lot this year to start the season. So even though they have 2 losses, this was a nice little win for Washington. Arizona State beats Kansas. I don't know what the hell is going on with Kansas. They're 1-5 now. Sam Levitt, 77 yards rushing at 157 yards passing, 4 passing touchdowns. Cam Scadaboo, one of the more underrated players in the game, 186 yards rushing and a touchdown. And Arizona State wins this game. So, I love what Kenny Gillingham's doing. It's a young and a lot of energy with this program. Look, they could mess around with some teams in this Big 12 because, I'll talk about it later on. My guy, Andrew Marks' Texas Tech Red Raiders beat Arizona. So I don't know what the hell is going on there. Really quickly, San Diego State, new Pac-12 team, beats Hawaii. Marcus Cooper had 109 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns. And so the Aztecs get a nice little win there over Hawaii. Really, one of the stories of the night, and don't look now if you guys fell asleep during this game, I don't blame you. Miami down 35-10 in the third quarter, comes back and wins 39-38 at Cal. I don't know what the hell happened in this game, but man, I can't believe Miami came back and won this thing. It was tailor-made for a Mario Cristobal letdown game. Cam Ward came back but yeah, it felt like it was Cal's night. They had a lot of energy. College game day was there. It was a late kick. It was ACC after dark. And then Cam Ward comes back. They come back from 25 down. Cam Ward throws for 437 yards, 2 touchdowns through the air, 1 touchdown rushing. Xavier Restrepo has a big catch that leads to the game-winning touchdown by Elijah Arroyo. There was a missed targeting call. Fernando Mendoza got decked. And Cal just couldn't come up with something at the end. They only came up with 3 points after they took a 35-10 lead. And this is a bad loss for Cal. It's a great win for Miami. It has me concerned because if Miami continues to win in the ACC, there's a really good chance that Cam Ward is going to be up near the top of the Heisman consideration. And you guys already know that I'm like the president or vice president of the Ashton Jeanty fan club. But good win for Miami, just a really demoralizing loss for Cal. That was a big opportunity for them at home to take down a top 10 opponent, and they just didn't do it. And then Texas Tech, shout out Andrew Marks. They beat Arizona 28-22. Taj Brooks has a monster game, 128 yards rushing and 3 touchdowns. Noah Fafita doesn't throw a touchdown. He has 301 yards passing. Tedero McMillan, 8 catches, 161 yards, but he gets a fumble forced. They're down 2 points. He loses the ball. It leads to really the ceiling touchdown for Texas Tech. And I have no idea how to diagnose the Big 12, man. I have no idea how to do this. Utah loses to Arizona. Arizona loses to Texas Tech the next week. I really have no idea how to figure this conference out. Kansas State's obviously really good. Colorado's up there. We'll see how the rest of it goes in terms of like these, Pac-12, now Big 12 teams. Arizona State has been pretty solid this season. So a wild weekend, man, for West Coast football. We'll see what happens next week. Big weekend. Penn State hosts USC. Oregon hosts Ohio State. So, man, next week's going to be a lot of fun here on the show. I can't wait to break it down, and I can't wait to, recap it next week as well. So, like, share, and subscribe. OT Mike Sports, Off the Mic 28 on Twitter. Hit the subscribe button below here on the video so you can get great content here from college football, NFL. We'll have basketball content. We do a lot of sports stuff here. Also, if you're a wrestling fan, sports entertainment, perfect blend of sports and sports entertainment here on the Off the Mic Sports Network. Thanks for watching. Appreciate all the love and support. I will talk to you guys very, very soon. Bye-bye.